This episode is supported by NC Idea. More on them later.
I take pride in being a visionary, and I know you said we're not going all the way back to your whole life. I am a little bit of a historian. What are sort of the untold stories, right, of some of these different projects?
You never said that you had a history in building anything.
No, never.
Hey everyone, welcome to Honey and Hustle. I am your host, Angela Hollowell, and today I'm speaking with Nish Evans, who is the founder of Lennox Grae. By the end of this episode, you will learn how a real estate investor with no general contracting experience is shaping Durham's skyline. Thanks so much for joining us today. This podcast is free and will always be free and available on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, Good Pods, Hey Time, you name it. While it's free for you to consume, it's not free for us to create. We pay our video editors, writers, production assistant, and operations manager for helping us make this show come to life. If you'd like to support us in making this show, please consider subscribing to our Substack community, using our affiliate links, or just simply sharing the show with someone who might enjoy it. All right, let's get into this conversation. So I kind of want to go back to the beginning a little bit. Not the beginning of like your life, but like the beginning of this story from me and probably people watching and listening to this. You have two different companies. One that's real estate investing, one that's general contracting. Why did you make the distinction between those two companies when they're kind of in the same industry?
Well, the main thing it comes down to is liability. So there are certain projects that you may work on, and one is more heavily, weighted on the real estate side. But it was also important to me from the start that in having these two different companies is that they would always be able to service the same project, but they never had to do that. And so operating them independently was, one, more of a strategic opportunity, but then secondly, like I said, it was always sort of creating, different opportunities to different pipelines, I probably should say, of revenue for one particular project. But my vision from the start was, hey, I want to buy it and build it. And my transition was actually out of banking. My last role was in venture capital, and it just, for me, was an eye-opening experience that, wow, there are folks, who are out here investing in other people's, companies. And a lot of that, right, is based on relationships, obviously is the strength of the ideal as well. But the fact that people were like putting their personal assets, and were willing to, back a lot of these deals, that to me, it was like, wow, that's, another level to me of bravery that, you're willing to be able to get someone to do this in terms of buying into your concept, but your vision, right, of whatever it is that you're trying to manifest. And so I was like, wow, why am I not doing this for myself? So I've always been entrepreneurial. I've always known that I wanted to have my own business. I think just that process has been, an interesting journey in terms of how I've gotten here. And so, like I said, being curious, looking for that next opportunity, leaving banking, I was always just interested to figure out, like, hey, real estate, what is that all about? And from there, it just sort of morphed into, I want to learn how to, purchase property. Of course, you have your different worlds of residential versus commercial real estate. And so I was like, hey, commercial seems like it might be a little bit more fun. I know those tend to be, right, some bigger deals, but I was just, like I said, curiosity has literally been the driving factor of my success, and just the interest that I have in different areas within these two industries. And so, just for me, that has been the biggest thing. So with that being stated, I said, hey, I want to learn how to buy it and build it. And that's really just always been the vision behind, what I do. And so now having some different conversations around, strategic planning and where do we see ourselves. And so now I'm more passionate, or you can say focused on having conversations about longevity and what does that look like. All of the different elements post-COVID that have impacted both of our industries, and just trying to figure out, it's not just, how do your business survive, but it's about thriving, and like I said, the longevity piece. So we are now going to start focusing, being more strategic as far as intentional real estate transactions, but then also on the construction side, we're currently navigating what does it look like to do specific trades and or projects and on the commercial side. So very laser focused right now, very, very intense planning, but this is what I know is going to be needed in order for us to scale and be able to hit the next level of success.
Okay.
Yeah.
So talk to me a little bit more about that transition out of venture capital and into raising funds for real estate investing, right? Because I believe your first round caught a lot of wind because it was raising real estate for a building here in downtown Durham, right?
Correct.
So talk to me about that fundraising round.
Yeah, so it was a very aggressive goal, to say the least. I really am excited. There was one, I should probably say, some intentionality. So the women who own the building, which is 112 West Main Street, Empress Development, they actually purchased the building and renovated it in 2016. Fast forward 2019, it's on the market, and they had some offers, and pretty much at that time I had started, just sharing with my network that I was interested in my transition in terms of real estate development, and had someone connected us, and basically they said, "Oh, that's great. We wish you the best." It was kind of one of those like pat on the back, like we wish you the best, and in all that you do, but like we have some offers, and we're ready to sell. And so I tell people this, but I was like, the resilient part, I think sometimes people underestimate that, and so I literally bugged them for like 2 days straight, and I was like, "You never said no," and so I pretty much just told them I was confident that I could figure this out, I could raise the capital, and I haven't shared this side of the story, but they said, okay, well, you have to match, the best offer that we have on the table, and that was $2.5 million, and you had to close within 90 days. And so this is, you have to also remember in, 2018, that this is a height of a lot of excitement, in Durham, and not to say people haven't stopped getting, being excited about Durham, but just a lot of real estate, transactions that were happening at that time. And so, the ladies were like, okay, we're going to take a chance, on you, and, here you go. And so we inked the deal. And from there, it was, I will tell people, it has been, I think, one of the most intense times, of my life. And intensity, I think, in so many different ways, right? Like, yes, definitely another level of stress, right, in terms of like figuring it out. But I think also it's one where sometimes those shorter term deals, I think they really help you stay focused, right? But also it's I tell people this, it's like literally like a bat, like batting, right? Like it's just, you have to keep swinging, and you keep getting better, right, with each swing, or at least I hope for most people that they get better with each swing. But it's just learning the process of, okay, here's someone who would be interested in this type of deal, and it just came through conversation. So taking a step back, yes, I had no one in my personal network, who had even done anything of this sort, and really the people that I tried to pitch it to in terms of, sort of our friends and family round, it was just kind of like, I don't really get what you're trying to do, and I love this, I've never shared, but my mom was like, I love you, but like I'm getting ready for retirement, so she was like, I can't, she couldn't help. And now, right, looking back, I say I'm so glad that they didn't, because it offers an opportunity, right, for you to get creative, in terms of how you do it. And so moving into this space, it was just like, okay, I never stopped to say, it had to be a certain type of person, right? In terms of being an investor, it was really just who would take a chance, on me. I don't think you can really be picky at this particular phase of the project. So, of the deal. So, really, I just started asking around, and it was just anybody I could think of, like, have you purchased real estate, and then from there, it literally started to be an opportunity where folks were saying, you know what, I can't do something like this, but let me connect you with someone else. And that's when I knew, like, okay, Nish, you're getting better, at the pitch, and so from there, you start getting into just more high net worth environments and other individuals, and then you're starting to, and I think this is the other part of it, you're learning, right, as you go. And I think for some people, that can be a little scary, but I think for most entrepreneurs, it's like, okay, no, this is fine. I'm gonna clean this up, dress it up a little bit different, and then be able to go out. So very fast-paced deal, but literally that was the key to success. It was just constantly getting in front of people, and there was not a day that I wasn't basically pitching a deal in order to be able to get investment partners. Fast forward in that deal, I ended up working with self-help, and they were able to help me in terms of a great opportunity. I think a lot of folks, looking back, right, would definitely agree with me on this, but it offered me the opportunity to actually be the sole owner of the deal. And they were just, and I appreciate this, they just kind of shared with me, like, we see your drive, we know that you want this, you've done your homework, and you were prepared. And I think that spoke volumes in terms of them getting comfortable, with this. I think also just in general, my background, in banking, finance, and operations, it added value, obviously, to what it is that I was doing. But I just remember finally getting this thing closed, and all I said to myself was, I just want to get better at this, right? And so from there, it led to 310 East Main Street. I have another project, 216 Rigsby, which is also in downtown Durham, and that one is slated for an 11-story high-rise. Right now, we've been looking at some opportunities in Rocky Mount. So I have some land there, but I also have a 50,000 square foot warehouse, and so there are a lot of opportunities. But like I said, for me, this year we're pulling back, haven't sourced any new deals, and really the goal, like I said, is to, one, make sure we get our projects across the finish line. We're dealing with some really, really challenging, economic conditions right now as far as interest rates are concerned, banks as far as how much collateral and other elements of a guarantee that they're going to require. So it's a really challenging market, right now, on top of supply chain challenges, in the construction industry. So like I said, for real estate, we're really just focusing on making sure that we're pulling off, stronger projects.
Okay. Yeah, that story brings up a lot of questions for me, which I'm excited to dive into, because, the first thing I'm hearing is like you're going to your friends and family round, which is often what people do when they first start anything, start investing, start fundraising, start a business, start anything. And a lot of times people don't realize that, like, your friends and family often aren't like your target audience, right? They want to support you in any way they can, and they will do that if it's within reason, if they have the capacity. But, as you grow and as you scale and as you think about long term, what do you want this to look like? They're often not the people that, you're directly including in your vision for, like, I want, my brother and my mom to invest in this high-end service or high-end item or high-end whatever that I'm creating or building. So talk to me a little bit now about, like, when you're thinking about strategic planning, what that looks like and what that means for you, because it's not like you haven't done big projects, right?
Yeah. So I think, speaking to that, only because we were talking about friends and family, but thinking about partners, right? So just being very thoughtful about who are investors, that will offer that space for you to be able to figure it out still. I think sometimes there's that pressure, right, of like, I have to know it, this deal has to be like, buttoned up. And the reality is that there are some times where it's like, I need a little flexibility, because that's just the nature, of the business. So I'm more thoughtful, right, in terms of just investment partners in my deals. I tend to not have a lot of partners. I know that's been one of the things that, like I said, I haven't been as open about with other folks, because the market moves so fast, right? It's one of those things where you have to have sort of a smaller pool of people who can be able to move, a lot faster, but also people who have been seasoned, real estate investors as well, because then there's a little less that you have to explain about, taking this type of risk. They understand those elements of it, and so really they're being thoughtful just as much as you are about what type of project are you trying to pull off, right? So, for instance, I'm super excited about my 310 East Main Street project. I'm excited about all of them, but I'm excited about this one because this was the first redevelopment project for us. And so just for, some of the folks in your audience, in terms of redevelopment, I'm taking an existing building, I fully gut that building, and then I'm basically creating a brand new, layout. Some people are fortunate that they have tenants, prior to them starting, that it makes it easier. And mine was actually a mixture of that. So part of it was word of mouth, where I was able to get some great local businesses that wanted to be a part of the project. But then you still have to sort of carve out what we call a warm shell, or something that could be move-in ready for a future, business. So 310 East Main is a historic renovation project. It is a little over 13,500 square feet, and it consists of 3 floors. And so I think what I share with a lot of folks is that you fall in love with sort of the exterior of the building because it has these beautiful, beautiful windows. It has a lot of the original plaster, limestone facade. And I think for me, it was just a great opportunity in terms of being able to maximize the entire project because the basement had 12-foot ceiling height. And so with all that being stated, fast forward today, after completing construction, the building is fully occupied and it's 4 women-owned businesses that occupy the building. And so that, evolution of that, it definitely took some terms, but it was just to say, wow, to have, the Daniel Company, Gloria Shealy, who has been in general contracting, commercial general contracting for over 30 years, to say, hey, I want to be intentional and to be able to support your business. So she has just under 4,000 square feet of office space there. Someone like Susan Failer, who's a seasoned business owner and is starting actually her second massage therapy practice, but she's there, Bull City Massage and Wellness. My firm will be there as well. And then our fourth has really been sort of our poster child, you kind of can say, because Cicely Mitchell, who was behind the Art of Cool Festival, her and her partner Russell Dudley, they're coming out with music, venue, high-end music venue. And so it's going to be just an amazing experience, I think, in terms of bringing that back, to Durham. So everyone's super, super excited about her return. So those are the 4 tenants. But once again, that story, right? And then, as far as representation, because we've been talking about that, 3 out of 4 are Black-owned, businesses, but we're all seasoned, entrepreneurs in our own right. And so I think this is just going to be a great opportunity to showcase like local Durham talent, and people who are able to be a part of the downtown, market. Like that's been one of the other, conversations about having more of our businesses, here. And to speak to that as well, that's been the case for actually all my Durham projects. So even going back to the 112 West Main, Luna, Empanadas is local, and they've started off as a startup back in, I think it was 2016 when they moved in. And, here we are, we just renewed our lease, together. And so they're going into their next term. And then on the opposite side of the building facing Parrish Street, my newest tenant is actually the Durham Vintage Collective. And that's brought some good excitement, as far as the retail space downtown. But those are 4 women who came together, and they all specialize in different eras of vintage clothing, jewelry, furniture, knickknacks, all those different things. And I think it's just a great concept. So I'm now focusing, as we're, sort of transitioning the conversation, but when I've saying intentional real estate placement, it's about, one, our local businesses, but I think also we have to be realistic about how do we create that space, but we also meet sort of the economic expectations, right? Because you do have partners, you do have lenders, that are involved in these transactions. And so I have found that, one, the sharing of space has made it more economical for folks to have a presence, right? And obviously be able to afford it. But it also has helped, like I said, in terms of being able to meet that economic expectation, with the folks that you have to answer to. So that's been for me one of the ways that I've been able to slow down and to really think about this, because you have Durham saying we want these things, and I hear what you're saying, but at the same time you also have such a drastic change in terms of the landscape, of Durham. And so when folks are like, hey, I want to be on Main Street, and you're like, wait, what? $40 a square foot? Like that's, I can't do it.
Right.
But the reality is, it's going to continue to go up. And that's where I would say with people, like, we have to get creative in terms of how we figure this thing out, but it's not going down. It's not going down.
This conversation is getting good, and trust me, it's only going to get better. But before we go on, I wanted to take a minute to thank our sponsor, NC Idea. NC Idea is an independent, private foundation whose vision is to help North Carolinians achieve their entrepreneurial ambition to start and grow high-potential companies. They have grants, workshops, and an annual summit. all to help advance entrepreneurship and promote equitable economic development. To learn more and apply for grant funding, visit their website at the link in the description or head to ncidea.org. All right, let's get back into this conversation. For people who are not familiar with Durham, not living in Durham, so we are currently in American Underground, which is 201 West Main Street, right? So if we're going, I guess, closer to Fayetteville, that's where 310?
Yep.
310 West Main Street is. And that's also kind of close to a lot of like Durham Public Services.
Correct.
So very interesting location there. And then Luna is like a block away, which is like Argentinian, like
South American cuisine.
Yeah.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So yeah, I don't know. Yeah. I'm like mind blown a little bit right now, but super excited about what's coming, and also like when we talk about location here. So West Main Street is also adjacent to Paris Street, which is the historical Black Wall Street, right? So when we talk about intentionality of like where she's buying property and like creating spaces for women-owned businesses, women entrepreneurs, but also like Black women, like that is also very like intentional and really important as we think about how a city can change over time, because like with the influx of Google and Apple and all these other businesses, the landscape in Durham may or may not always recognize its history,
right,
and where it comes from in terms of its legacy of entrepreneurship. And you know, I was thinking like how much does the legacy of like Black entrepreneurship play into your success and your desire to, you know, build and redevelop and invest in this area? Yeah. And if it wasn't a part of the legacy of the cities or of Rocky Mount as well, would you want to?
Yeah, so I think that's a great question. And, you know, to be honest, I really from the start was just, how do you get going, right? Okay. So I really didn't have the capacity to really think about it from that lens, right? Yeah. I just knew like one, it was always like, hey, I'm trying to figure this thing out. I'm trying to pull it off, but it was never like, oh, what is the bigger, you know, picture here in terms of, you know, what you're asking about, the legacy piece and the intentionality when it comes to, you know, our community. And so, now, like I said, fast forward, I am very thoughtful in that. And one of the things when we were talking about the strategic planning is that I'm like, hey, maybe something is happening here. It's not inked, you know, not inked yet, but I'm like, we're sort of getting into these East Main projects, right? So it's sort of thinking about it from that standpoint. And so historically, right, those are where majority of our Black communities, you know, were residing. But it also, I have to take a step back and sort of getting a little bit more into the construction side of things. This is also where there's prominently pollution. You know, there tends to be, you know, in terms of the landscape, it's just not the most favorable because of the way that the sun, you know, rises and shines. Like I was actually talking with my good friend about that, Alicia Hilton Daniel, who's awesome. So we were grabbing dinner and talking about this. So it was like, that makes a big difference because I don't know about you, but for me, light impacts like my emotions so much. And so I think about that when I'm doing, you know, sitting down with the architect and talking through different projects. And so it was like, wow, like, you know, when we're talking about sort of injustices and just across the board, it's like, how does that play actually into architecture, into construction, into, you know, land development and all those different things. And so, I am now, in terms of some of our real estate projects, thinking about what are sort of the untold stories, right, of some of these different projects. So going back to 310, it's actually dubbed the Sun Building. We're working through, you know, finalizing that for the Federal Historic Registry, you know, in terms of that. Durham recognizes it already as a historic landmark. But when you think about it, right, going back, and I am a little bit of a historian, but going back to state archives and looking at some of the earlier, you know, newspaper articles, it was like, yeah, of course you're not speaking of people of color, you know, in any sort of positive, you know, manner. And I'm like, wow, fast forward, this building just turned 100 years old. And not only are we talking about people of color that are being in the building, but also women. And so it's like, wow, you know, that changes the narrative. And so how can we tell that story? But I'm focused on sort of who may have worked at the Sun Building, right? People of color and or women behind the scenes that were like always like the case, rock stars, and never got a chance, right, to tell their story. So we're still digging through that a little bit, but I would love to incorporate that, into the project in terms of creating murals, other historical pieces that we can put, in the hallways there, and just be able to showcase, those stories. And so I think that that's really important. The warehouse that I mentioned to you, in Rocky Mount is, has always been the Deal and Supply, has been sort of a mom and pop shop. Okay. Historically, and they've purchased buildings all along the East Coast. And so I'm starting now to dig into that history a little bit more, but I'm curious to know, what was happening, in terms of some of the manufacturing, production that they may have been involved in as it related to war efforts, but then also their main, sort of the staple of their business is that they were sort of a, like I said, mom and pop hardware store. Mm-hmm. And so who worked in the store, and so I'm just always curious about those types of things. So for me now, it's going deeper and really understanding who were some of the people behind the scenes and how can we figure out ways to incorporate their story, into the project. Yeah. So that's been one of the things that, like I said, working with my team on is us creating the story first before we even start with construction drawings, before we navigate any further conversations with, whether it's with our local political leaders, or even within the community. It's like, let's just first create the story and better understand so we know what conversations, right, we need to have moving forward. So that's been one of the things, like I said, in terms of me being able to personally and professionally slow down, that I'm looking at it from that particular lens. So that's been just important to me. It's like, how do we tell our stories? Because who else is going to be able to tell those? Yeah. So, yeah.
Understood. So you mentioned construction a couple of times here, but I want to dive in because you've never said that you had a history in building anything. No, never.
Never.
Okay. So
I don't even know if I should still take credit in building anything, because it's always a team effort. So no, but I, in terms of my personal journey, so I do identify as a Black Native, and so with my family history, I was actually born in Louisiana, and I know you said we're not going all the way back to your whole life, but like just to give context. And so for me, just better understanding French, my French Creole ancestry, Haitians, and just my family in general, through this process of reconnecting, with my family, it was really important to just understand who are they, right? But also, what were some of the things that they did? Because I am now feeling more empowered that I'm manifesting some of the dreams that they have. So through conversations, through research, finding out that both of my great-grandfathers worked in construction. One was actually a skilled carpenter and worked mainly in New Bern along the eastern coast, and did a lot. Built the church that my great-grandmother actually had in the community, and so just very much a skilled carpenter. And then my other great-grandfather, my paternal grandfather, was working with pipes. So he did fabrication with pipes, but was also a farmer. And so I just, like I said, it's one of those things where I often think about, like, what were the things that they dreamed? I don't even know if it was a construction company, but it could have just been something as simple as being self-employed, right? And so I think about those things, and I'm like, wow, once again, it's an honor in terms of what I do, but the manifestation of things that they've thought about is like, who knows, right? Who knows? Like, maybe that's what has now, occurred. But I'm passionate about, on the construction side, I think as anyone is like, wow, we go from, a blank slate to actually manifesting, this particular concept. And so it's been fun. We've done projects, renovations in terms of the Durham Bulls Stadium. More recently, we just completed a high-tech learning lab for the Institute of Minority Economic Development. So we converted their entire lower level into a high-tech lab, and that was amazing to see. But they're going to have programming and just other resources for entrepreneurs for different HBCUs, and so it's sort of a hub, for them. So that was amazing being involved. We of course have been the GC for the 310 East Main Street project, and then we just have other projects that that we've been a part of. But to me, that's just been the excitement. It's just to see the manifestation, but it's its own animal. Be very clear. So, in terms of how people are like, how do you do it? It's like, this is definitely where your soft skills come into place, because dealing with subcontractors, is a totally different animal. I'll just put it that way. So there are a lot of personalities. Okay. Yes, I'm typically, the only female that is on the job site, and definitely you get the surprises when folks, are introducing themselves or coming on the job site like, hey, where's the contractor? And I'm like, you're looking right at her, so sometimes you'll get that shock. But like I said, I think I've been very fortunate in terms of the folks that I've been able to work with, and they've just been really great partners, and they understand that I want to build something great, and I want to learn how to build, correctly. I think there are, of course, a lot of folks who are in the industry that just, it's another investment, for them, and that's the way that they act, and that's totally fine. But I really want to understand, like, yes, why would you use, this nail versus this one, and what's going to be the long-term effect of this particular decision, or what's the final goal that we're trying to achieve here. So it's been great. I have a lot of thought partners, a lot of people who have just, they're seasoned contractors, and so I can call them and, ask them questions, and that's really made a difference. Okay. Yeah.
So my last question, kind of. Yeah. So throughout all of this, like, I've never heard like any wavering from, like, the goals that you had for yourself or the things that you wanted to do, no matter what happened, no matter what kind of iffy answers you got, no matter what surprise looks you got, no matter what setbacks that I'm sure you've had that you're not telling me about. Yeah. Right? So talk to me a little bit about where that confidence comes from, because for a lot of new entrepreneurs, right, it is a lot of like trial and error. It's a lot of like trial, reiterating, try again. It's not like this straight linear path, right? So talk to me how you work through a lot of these moments, maybe behind closed doors, maybe in public, of like uncertainty, if you have them. Yeah, no.
So you definitely have it. And I think, to your point, one is just the acknowledgement that it's not a straight path. I think you have to like literally force yourself to like be okay with it not being a straight path. And once again, I think that sort of weeds out people very early on in terms of whether they want to continue to pursue, being an entrepreneur. But for me, there literally is comfort in the unknowing. And that's the only way that I can put it. And I've been okay with that, from the start. Okay. And I'm the type of person, just being honest, like, you probably have heard this analogy before, but it's like the person who jumps out the airplane and then assembles their parachute. That's me all day long. I'm like, hopefully I don't hit the ground, like, it's just how I've always been sort of built. And it's one of those things where I've shared this very early on in my career, like, we are smart enough to figure it out. And a lot of times that just comes through conversations. And that's where I've tried to spend, more of my time and my energy in terms of being thoughtful, being strategic. All of that comes through sometimes other people's experiences, and then other times it's just, hey, I'm thinking about it this way. Let me just bounce this idea, off of someone, in order to just kind of get another opinion. But I'm also have been very much in the space of just move with confidence, which is, I'm just going to give it my best shot. Yeah. I've justified why I'm going to do this. Yeah. If it don't work out, at least I can explain what I was thinking, when I did this. And like I said, you get comfortable with it. But I think, like everyone else, you've had times where, hey, financially, like, how am I going to make this thing, work? And you figure it out. You definitely have your moments where you feel exhausted and you can cry. You can talk to your therapist, your mom, like whatever it may be. And so I think for me, it's been all of those emotions. And to be honest, I think in my line of work, it's literally just a roller coaster. It really is. And so I've gotten used to it, but also I'm learning how not to take so many things personal, and that's been the biggest change, for me. I'm still working through it, but I take things so personal, but I recognize because I'm so passionate, about what it is that I'm doing. So a lot of it is been through that. But I grew up in a super competitive environment, like family, just my environment in general. I play sports like my entire life, like around the year. And so I think that a lot of that, played into sort of my personality, and that in terms of that grit is like, every sport, they're like, hey, down to the last minute, dig deep, or you're lifting weights and it's like push through that last set. I feel like those are all the things that at the time didn't seem like a big deal, but now I can relive, some of those moments and like, okay, this is what it set me up for. So yeah. But for me now, I'm more concerned about just in terms of longevity, and we talk about this all the time, but I'm more focused on just as a community, us getting out of a space of survival and actually being able to live. That's really important for me right now. So when I think about expanding the company, or when I'm thinking about other projects, I kind of pull from my Native American side, but it's like, how are we feeding the tribe, right? So it's no longer just about me, but it's like, how is everyone else, going to be able to get what they need to be sustainable and to teach their family, and for all of us, right, to be able to move together. Because I think history has taught us, like, we can't just keep having these one-off situations like, oh, it's just niche. No, it needs to be other, developers, and there needs to be other general contractors, and we need to be able to figure out a way, to move collectively. So I'm in a space of I'm open, to those opportunities, but conversations around community and collective is where I'm at now. Yeah. That's not where I was before, because like everyone, I'm just trying to figure out how to make it, but now I'm recognizing it's all about collective. So I'm on to that. I haven't really shared this. I'm on to ways in construction to be able to incorporate robots. That's been something. So I'm looking for connecting with people more in the AI, robotics space. Would love to trying to plan now, but spend some time in Japan. I've really been interested in how they have incorporated, robots into their society. But I'm thinking about what are items that are a heavy lift and or are dangerous, just in terms of when we're thinking about safety of employees on the construction site, that now a robot would be able to assist with. I'm also thinking about how my team, in terms of when we're talking about construction management, we're at the table being able to make decisions. I think that's really important when we're talking about people of color in leadership, positions, and we're talking about design related, items, or, I just think we need to be a part of those conversations. And so I'm focused on, sort of that level of management and making sure that my team feels confident, in making decisions when they're out in the field. You don't have to call me. You have more experience than me most of the time. So I'm like, you guys can do it. And so that's really important for me, is that once again, we're bringing more leaders, to the table, and people who can help make decisions. And the more manual labor are the things that I think can be offloaded, because we're taking a really hard hit, and I know a lot of industries can say that, but for construction, in terms of just labor and people's availability, and between sort of the I call them the mature generation retiring, and sort of figuring out a way to also make the industry, I think, more attractive, to the younger generation, trying to figure out, like I said, where that falls. And so with all that being stated, that's why I think I'm like, we probably need to figure out a way to get this into that. So I'm thinking about that, and how does that play into the longevity, of things. So, yeah.
No, I love that perspective for sure. You also remind me of, and I know I'm going to butcher his name, Tesho. He's out of Charlotte. Okay. And he used to be a soccer player. Okay. And now he's a real estate investor. Okay. And he had this article in Southern Urbanism that was talking a little bit about what you're talking about, like how, he's used to playing with a team, and so that collective prosperity mindset, but also that grit and grace kind of also played into his perspective of real estate investment. But yeah. I don't know. Obviously, you can identify it. Okay. Yeah. So before I let you get out of here, I have a couple rapid fire questions for you. Okay. You game? Okay. She's like, I'm ready. I didn't even get out of them now. She's like, I'm ready right now. Okay. What is the costliest decision that you would make again?
I actually would not make a costly decision again. I'm being honest with you. I think I've gotten off. There have been probably 2 deals that I can think of right now. In talking with my, real estate attorney about this, and he was like, there's always a cost, right, to doing business, but it's one where I was like, I could have sat still a little bit longer, and thought about this a little bit more. But at the end of the day, right, the amount of money that I lost I mean, it wasn't like, oh, this is going to set you back, you know, for like 5 years, but it definitely was like, okay, Nish, you learned your lesson, and we're not going to do that again. So yeah, I don't want to repeat
She's
anything.
like, absolutely not. None. All right. And that is very interesting for real estate investors.
No.
But I feel like everything you do is expensive. If you didn't have to make money, how would you spend your day?
Ooh, good question. I would probably be outdoors.
Okay.
I'm a big nature enthusiast. I love camping, backpacking, hiking, the whole nine. Kayaking. I am now trying to figure out like the best spots to go fly fishing, and I tell people I could care less about the fishing. I just want to wear the waders and stand in the water. So yeah, that's what I would do all day.
That is hilarious.
Yeah.
Who is a founder or real estate investor that you look up to, and why?
I would say this. Actually, my construction advisor, if I can, I'm pivoting a little bit, but his name is Andrew Phillips, and he is one of my investment partners, but he has been one of the most thoughtful, best thought partners that I could even ask for. And I haven't shared a whole lot of this, but he is the person that always tells me, Nish, go figure it out. And it's one of the most empowering things, like whenever I get off the phone with him, you know, and it's just like, oh my God, this subcontractor talked to me this way. Can you believe this? And he just listens. But then at the end, he's like, Nish, go figure it out. And it's something about that one, is confidence that he knows I'm going to figure it out. But at the same time, it's just one of those things where it's an element of encouragement in terms of slowing down and once again thinking, right? Because so much of my, like I said, the start felt very reactionary, and that's the reason why I said I value the space I'm in now in terms of being more, you know, strategic and being thoughtful. When you are hustling and trying to figure it out, it's a certain level, I think, of anxiety that you're operating on, a different set of, I have no idea where my energy was coming from. I was like, did I even eat? Did I even feed my kids today? Like, it was, it's like you're so, you know, you're so in tune with seeing that thing, you know, happen, right? And I think now for me, it's more of the passion of, yes, I want to see it happen, but I'm not so deadlocked that it has to happen, you know, this particular way, or it doesn't have to happen today, right? And that's where there's been some maturing on my part as far as the business, you know, is concerned. But yeah, Andrew Phillips is awesome. He's knowledgeable. He's had his own construction company. You know, he's worked for other general contractors, and he's just seen it all. And he's always one who just says, Nish, you got to see more projects, you know, like you see more deals. And that's always reassuring, because once again, the pressure of not a lot of people who look like me who are in this space, I got to get it right the first time. And that just helps, right? Take a lot of pressure. Like, no, even if you were a middle-aged white man, there's still things that they're going to get wrong. And you like, but we, right, tend to sometimes internalize that and make the assumption I've got to get it right, you know, the first time. And so I've been able to cure myself of that particular perspective. But that was something that I was holding on to a lot and didn't realize that was self-induced, you know, pressure. So
No, I could definitely identify with that last part. Like, I was talking to my mom about this. I was like, you know, a lot of times, like, founders that don't come from like money, that didn't raise a big friends and family around, like, we don't often have the luxury of like making mistakes early on, because like there's so much more on the line for us, probably financially. And so like we're always thinking like, okay, I need to pay the bills, I need to feed my team, I need to feed my kids. Like, you know, there's a lot more at stake if we don't get it right, you know, but like also realizing that like nobody ever gets it 100% right to start. So like probably the pressure that we put on ourselves, you know, we need some pressure, but maybe not that much pressure. Maybe we're being a little bit dramatic, but you know, who's going to save us from that?
I think it just takes away from the fun of why you're doing it, right? And I think that's the part, is focusing on, okay, I'm setting myself up, you know, for this journey. But to your point, when you don't have a lot of resources, it's hard to realign yourself with the fun, you know, piece of it. It's like, no, we got to make sure this is working and I'm paying myself, and, you know, and all of those different things. But there's just a different mindset around that. So,
What painful business experience are you most grateful for?
I would probably say two things. They're kind of in the same. There have been business partners who have had to drop at the last minute, which means I have to go back out, and raise capital. And then there's also been adjustments in terms of tenants that were designed for a project that I then had to turn around, and go and find them. And so for a lot of folks, it's like, not a big deal. But it's like when you're in it, like actually constructing a site, or if you are getting close to, actually closing and needing to move this project forward, that's a big deal, because literally now your schedule, is starting all over again, and you're having to push it back out, right? And so I think for me, the other piece of this has been, I've been bootstrapping along the way. And so if I had a team, right, it's not a big deal, because I could just assign that to them. But I've been in a space where I've been an owner operator. So that's up to me to now go and figure out, how to get this capital, or, how I need to handle whatever transition happens, on the actual project site, construction site. And so that has been exhausting to say the least, but it's also one where, once again, slowing down and being able to maybe see, are there some people who can work with me in a consulting capacity, a part-time capacity, even if it's for an interim, period of time, or it could be specific to this particular project, which is okay, but it gets it, further along, and there's less for me to have to manage, myself. And so I've never been one to say I have to do it all, but I don't think, once again, that hustle mentality of trying to figure out how do you hand this off to other people when you're also trying to build a brand at the same time. How does that even work? And now I'm recognizing, like, it works, Nish, because you just do it, and then once again, over time, it keeps getting better. And that's the things that I remind myself of. Or this could just be, a temporary role that someone has. They're bringing, a great asset to maybe this particular project or this deal, but that's it. There may not be, any additional services that they provide. There may not be a relationship beyond, this particular transaction, and that's okay. Yeah, that's okay.
That's fair. That's valid. This one is honoring the historian in you.
Okay.
What would the title of your autobiography be?
Ooh, gosh, I feel like I have to join Toastmasters again and just with all these questions. These are good. My autobiography. I don't know. I'm writing. That's a good one. That's a really good one. Okay. I don't know.
Okay.
Maybe something along the lines of, I take pride in being a visionary, and I think that's a lot of real estate. I can say that about construction as well, but I would definitely say about real estate is because I think oftentimes, when you think of the term developer, that's really that vision is everything. You're seeing something literally that's not there, or assuming, right, that this is going to create whatever it needs to create, right, in terms of this particular community. I think it's gotten a bad rep because oftentimes we immediately think about gentrification, right, but we're not thinking about true developers are bringing something new, right, into that market. And so I would say that would be the thing that I hope for my autobiography in terms of just being a visionary person, is that you're bringing something there, or being able to deliver, right, on what the community is asking for. And I think that's that intentional, development piece. And then for construction, it would definitely just be like I told you before, just great projects that I think anybody would take pride in. And my boys, I often speak about them, but that was the vision as well. We're talking about legacy is bringing them into this, and the company is named after them. And so that's always been important for me, that the things they see, just for them, oh, that's cool, Mom, or I can't believe you did this, or is this ours? When we have those conversations, it's really beautiful, and I'm hoping that continues to inspire them, which when you were talking about being an architect, my oldest wants to be an architect. So he's done his first internship, and he's getting into the weeds of it, but he loves it. And then more recently, he was gifted a book by the late Mr. Phil Freelon, and so that's even brought, oh wow, the representation and seeing some of the architects over at Evoke, which are, you know, over on Foster Street, that has just lit up his eyes, and he's like, oh my goodness, like, you know, there are Black architects, and this is like really cool. So I love that, and like I said, I'm hoping that the inspirational piece, you know, continues for them.
Yeah,
that's important in the work that I do.
Okay, so I actually have never said your name yet on camera, Lennox and Grae. So is that their middle name?
That's their middle name.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
That makes
so
sense.
Ellery Lennox and Zolan Grae.
Okay.
Yep.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
All right.
So that was I didn't know if you had that as a question. I'm sorry, but it was just like, how did you come up with the name? And most people, like if you look at construction companies, they tend to name their companies like after themselves. And I was like,
I noticed.
You know, yeah. I was like, I could go with Nish, but I was like, no, that's not working. So I was like going back and forth, and then I was like, hey, you know, there's a legacy component to this. There's no pressure for them to take over the company, but I'm like, that would be cool if they decided they wanted to. And so I was like, what would be something that to me would motivate them, you know, and they would take pride in it. And I was like, what about their middle names? And I was like toying with it, and I was like, Grae, Lennox. I was like, Lennox and Grae. I was like, hey, maybe that could work. So I don't know. It sounded distinguished.
It does. Polished.
And,
very much
so. So I was like, hey.
Gotcha. Well, thank you so much for sharing. I feel like I just got the full story today, and they got the full story. So I'm super excited.
Thank you.
Yes.
I appreciate it. Yeah.
That's all for today's episode. And if you can't wait for the next episode, you can subscribe to our paid membership on Substack to get exclusive content like outtakes, bloopers, after-show thoughts, and more. If you enjoyed this episode, please be sure to give us a 5-star rating on your app of choice, or like this video on YouTube. We'll catch you in the next episode.